Chad Brendel joins us, covers Cincinnati Bearcat Journal, does a great job with that. He is on with us 365 Sports. It's been a while, Chad. How you been? Uh-oh.
You're muted, Chad.
Oh, there we go. I'm good. My dogs were barking, so I didn't want you guys to hear that. But
no,
Bearcats are good again. So you guys have me back on. It's nice.
Yeah, I mean, and what a nice story. I mean, you got the Arizona State, what they've done. There's some teams that are down based on expectations. What BYU's done is phenomenal, too. Why is Cincinnati better than perhaps the expectations at the start of the year?
They got quarterback right. I mean, that's what it comes down to in college football in 2024. It always has, but in the transfer portal era, if you're going into the portal and you're looking for a starting quarterback, the success of your season depends on getting that evaluation right, finding a guy that fits your budget and can win you football games. And Brendan Sorsby has been outstanding, and that gives Cincinnati a chance to win every week. I mean, guys, we're 4 points away from having a completely different conversation about Cincinnati because they gave away a game at Pitt. Like, they had that game won, and they blew it. It was 27-3, and they let Pitt win. And Texas Tech, I mean, that was, a couple mistakes, and they could have walked out of Texas Tech with the victory, and this team could be 6-0 and be one of the, biggest stories in the country for their turnaround. So you got to get quarterback right. They got Brendan Sorsby right, and that changes the whole dynamic of what you can do.
Yeah, Chad, he's a Texas guy, so knew a little bit about him. Transferred from Indiana, as you mentioned there, but I didn't expect this. I don't know what the expectations were over on your side of the fence, but what have you been most impressed by him, and is it more than you expected when they initially landed him?
More than I expected when they landed him, yes. But, in having conversations with people around the program, as soon as his name went in the portal, they were on it. And they made that happen really quick. And a lot of people don't know this nationally, but at the end of the process, at the end of the transfer portal cycle, he got a call from Lincoln Riley on that last visit weekend and said, I want you to come out to USC. And Brendan Sorsby had already kind of cast his lot with Cincinnati and said no to USC, which is, to Lincoln Riley, which is, a quarterback maker. So, they had a feeling that they had got this one right from the jump. When you watched him at spring practice, you could tell he had something. Did I know he was going to be this good? No, a lot of that is how good did they manage to do getting receivers and talent to go around him. And they've done a great job there, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit. But you could tell he was a guy that had something different about his game and had a little bit of that confidence, that belief in himself that the great quarterbacks have. So I don't know if I saw this coming, but we definitely were pretty confident it was going to be an upgrade from a year ago.
Chad, you mentioned those skill players. The running backs are good. The wide receivers are good. Like, they were really, especially if you looked at the way they ran the ball last year, they didn't have problems that most teams that had the record they had last year have along the offensive line. Like, it was really, they needed a plug-and-play guy at quarterback to get them back to relevance again.
Yeah, I mean, they also, like I said, they also did really well. They went and got a local guy that was at Ohio State for 4 years. He caught 4 passes in 4 years. And now Jim Nagy's talking about him being a second-day draft pick in tight end Joe Royer. That's how good he's been this season. And then you had Xavier Henderson, who was a transfer from Florida that was here last year. That was really good. But then you go out and you find a guy like Tony Johnson, a wide receiver that has been good, caught a touchdown pass against UCF, a guy named Jamoy Mays that they brought up a level. He has been really good for them. So not only did they hit on Sorsby, but they made sure they had a bunch of talent that scattered in around him. And that has really made this offense take a large jump.
Chad Brendel with us. I had a couple of Cincinnati Bearcats fans in the chat. this Saterfield, he wasn't the most popular, right? Because obviously Fickle was there. Now he moved on to Wisconsin. Are people starting to kind of come around to him as the head coach?
Yeah, I think, it was a tough situation. One, Cincinnati and Louisville hate each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's been a rivalry for decades. And so you take a coach that Louisville fans were happy to get rid of, and Cincinnati fans are all like instantly going to be on the defensive. And trust me, my mentions still, when Cincinnati loses a game and we post the Scott Saterfield press conference from after the game, it's still filled with Louisville fans. Like, get a life. What are you doing? You got your guy in Jeff Brown. Move on. But so yeah, and replacing, it's really hard to replace a legend. And when you talk about Cincinnati football, Brian Kelly and Luke Fickell, those were the guys that took Cincinnati to incredible heights. So following Luke Fickell was going to be tough. The roster wasn't in a great situation, and you were moving leagues. So it was going to be really difficult for Scott Satterfield, regardless, last year. And then they didn't get quarterback right. Emory Jones didn't work out. And, once things, if you go back and look at last year, there were a lot of close games at the beginning of the year that, a mistake here and there, they let get away. And then it kind of snowballed. The team lost confidence. There was a lot of, the locker room wasn't great. Thanks to Central Florida for taking a couple of those guys off our hands for us. But, ultimately it snowballed and they weren't ready, and they had a year to get ready. And I think one of the underrated things, they have a really, really good recruiting talent acquisition department. And those guys have done a really good job understanding what needed to be done and how to restock this roster. And I think they deserve a lot of credit as well, because there's a lot of transfers and there's a lot of true freshmen that are making an impact for Cincinnati this year that kind of have allowed them to turn things around.
Chad, have you seen the recruiting start to uptick now?
Not yet, because it's fresh still. It's just happening. But, I'm interested to see what that list looks like. Usually we're able to get that completed by Thursday or so for who's going to be in town for the homecoming game this weekend at noon. But yeah, I think, people are going to start paying a little bit more attention. Where it might help more is they've got a couple kids that are committed. Like, they've got a kid, Benny Patterson, that's from Indianapolis area. And all of a sudden he's got Michigan and USC and, all these high majors are jumping in on him. You hope that winning gives you maybe a little bit better chance to hold on to some of these guys that you've done a good job identifying, so that they don't get away and end up, at a program that's having a little bit more success. You can say, hey, look, we've got this thing back on track. Like, you committed here for a reason. Let's stick with it.
So, Chad, 4-2 very well could be, 6-0, as you pointed out earlier. 4 total points. There's an easy way to see how this is even better story at this point. But Arizona State this weekend at home, and I'm sure you've seen the quarterback news coming out of the Sun Devils, PR offices. That's pretty notable there, obviously. Just your thoughts on Arizona State, the defense going up against Cam Scatterbo, probably even more so now that Jeff Sims is playing quarterback. How do you feel about the defense and what you've seen there? Sorsby's obviously been great, but that side and this matchup, what are your thoughts entering Saturday?
So they're getting better. You guys know this. I don't know how many people on the national level do. They brought in Tyson Veit to run the defense this year. Tyson Veit was kind of the right-hand man of that defense at Iowa State. And I think it's taken a lot of sorting and figuring and okay, who is the right fit for these positions? Because they brought in so many. I mean, they have 47 new guys on this roster that weren't on the roster last year. So you've got to do some experimenting, and you've got to find out, okay, not only this is the right guy for this position, but then how are we best suited using this guy? And you're starting to see the linebackers come around, which that Iowa State defense, linebackers have been the forte of that Iowa State system, the 3-3-5 stack with 3 safeties. And Cincinnati's linebackers are starting to round into form. and their defensive backfield is starting to play better. Dante Corleone looks like Dante Corleone again. He had a blood clot issue in the offseason, didn't practice all the way through camp, like live. He was off to the side. He got to do some individual stuff. But now he's starting to, he ragdolled a couple guys from UCF last week. And now you're starting to see that come together. They did not have a lot of success over 4 quarters against Taj Brooks when they played Texas Tech. But then last week they get RJ Harvey, and they're able to hold him under 100 yards. 3 games in a row, you're getting a top 10 back. Taj Brooks, RJ Harvey, and now Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State. So hopefully what they were able to do against UCF, they can translate a little bit when they're facing another really talented running back against Arizona State. But I thought that Arizona State passing offense was really starting to click. That didn't exist for them early in the season. And if you watch that Utah game, they threw it really efficiently. They weren't throwing over the top and hitting a bunch of bombs, but they were moving the chains. They were keeping that really good Utah defense on its heels. If they're one-dimensional, that bodes well for Cincinnati coming into this game. That defense is still a work in progress, but it's a lot better than it was at the beginning of the season. And the big thing was, do they have a pass rush? They're now second in the Big 12 in sacks, which nobody expected. And they shut out Houston, and they held UCF to 13. They gave up, half 100 almost to Texas Tech. But in 2 of their 3 games, that defense has performed well, and it's been bend but don't break. I think one of the biggest keys to this Arizona State game, Arizona State is the exact number 108th in scoring percentage in the red zone on offense. If Cincinnati can bend but not break and keep them out of the end zone, they can win this game Saturday.
Chad, one thing on Dante Corleone, we know about the blood clots and the chances of him playing. He had a couple of sacks against UCF. Is he starting to get that motor? Not that he hadn't been playing with a motor, but is he starting to get in that position to start to wreak havoc?
I think so. He was really good against Texas Tech, and then he was really good again against UCF. I think he's just back in game shape. That's the hardest thing. He was healthy, but he wasn't getting live reps, like I said, until the second week of the season. So now, week 7, week 8, that's a guy that's now back into playing shape. And he's he is, it's unbelievable how strong he is. And how many times he will just take a center, and next thing you know, he's in the quarterback's lap, and you're like, how did that happen so fast? And he's explosive. He's 6'2", 340 pounds. He doesn't look like a guy that should have great short area quickness to go with his power. Now that's starting to come back, and I think that is the catalyst for changing who they are defensively, because it's so difficult when the pocket collapses that quick, and you just have a guy there that's a fire plug that you can't move.
Chad, interesting schedule remaining. Sun Devils this week. Trip to Colorado still to come. Got a couple of big road trips to Ames and Manhattan. So it's going to be interesting to see how this second half goes. But what have been your impressions of this mutant Big 12, this newest version of the league where, it seems like everybody's got a chance every Saturday?
I'm annoyed with something about the Big 12, guys.
Go for it.
In the past, I've been doing this. I've been doing in the media since 1994. I've been on the UC beat since 2006. In the past, when you talk about preseason rankings for a league, and in terms of looking at a schedule, and you go, wow, Cincinnati avoids 4 of the top 5 teams projected to win the conference, you think, boy, they've got a chance to have a pretty easy schedule. And here we are. Arizona State's in a position to win the league. Colorado's in a position to win the league. West Virginia didn't start well, but now they're playing a little bit better. They're in a position to win the league. It was supposed to be a soft schedule, guys.
I know.
That's not how it looks in week 8.
It's been like this with TCU's run in 22, Baylor in 21. It's just the lead. I picked BYU and Arizona State at 15 and 16 in my preseason poll. I picked West Virginia last year to finish dead last. They were 9 and 4. So we are idiots in the preseason poll business, and that's fine.
So,
but you're right.
You know what we did? It got me in a little bit of trouble. But UC the year that they went to the college football playoff, the AAC sent out the preseason media ballot. And we knew, like, okay, Cincinnati and Houston are going to be really good. And then I can't remember who it was, but whoever was at the bottom of the league was going to be really bad. And then we took all the other teams and we put them in a hat, and we did a live podcast where we did the media poll by drawing names out of a hat. And I think we're going to have to go back to that.
No.
But 1 through 16 for this league, because you got a better chance to be right with that than you do thinking you know how good these teams are going to be.
Yeah, and I know you got to go, and we have a guest coming up, but we have fans of certain teams in the Big 12 that if they're not good this year, then the league is down. That's not the case. It's just it's unbelievably dysfunctional in a very, very fun-loving way, unless, like you said, Cincinnati gets screwed now on a schedule that appeared to be weak. Chad, love you, man. Thanks for your time, as always. Appreciate it every time.
Appreciate you, gentlemen. You know, anytime, let me know, and I will be here.
Yes, sir. Chad Brendel again with us from Bearcat Journal.